Hi there everyone, we're here at New York Comic Con with Willow Wilson. Thank you very, very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
We would like to ask you some questions about Invisible Kingdom, your book with Christian Ward. Christian was very kindly a guest on our main podcast recently, and he was really lovely. He told us how wonderful you are. So, in the back matter of issue 1 of Invisible Kingdom, you mentioned that you've wanted to write a story about space nuns for quite a long time. Why space nuns?
Really, that interest grew out of research I was doing for a completely different book, The Bird King, which is a novel that I published earlier this year, set in 15th century Spain. And one of the characters in that book is a monk in the Catholic tradition, and I realized that I had a lot of research to do to sort of make him feel historically semi-accurate and to sort of get the tone right. So I did all of this research into Catholic monastic traditions, both modern day and historical. And so I ended up with all of this extra research that I didn't use in that book, but that I found really fascinating. And I thought, you know what I want to do? Space nuns. You know, I wanted to do a book that sort of touched on a monastic tradition, but not using any vocabulary of any existent religion here on Earth. So what Christian and I did was make up this space religion kind of from scratch, but that very much explores that tension between the seen and the unseen, the everyday world and the monastic tradition, and the ways that spiritual authority can be used and abused, and it all comes out in the story of Invisible Kingdom.
So, how much of your own religious journey is reflected in Vess's journey in Invisible Kingdom? Because obviously you've been quite open sort of talking about your own journey, you published some of your memoirs about it. How much of you is represented in Vess, or is she completely separate?
You know, I think all characters are in some way autobiographical, because you can't help but pull from your own experience when you're creating something in a fictional world. So I think there are bits of me in Vess. There is no one thing that I specifically pull on to create her character that I would say, oh yes, that's definitely me, that's absolutely my experience. But she does leave her home world to sort of go on a journey to a completely different planet to become a nun, which we spell N-O-N-E.
Yes, I love that touch.
Thank you. Because the religion is called the Renunciation, and so it seemed appropriate that the people who withdraw from the world are nuns.
Okay.
But so she does have to go quite a long way to sort of go on her own spiritual journey. You know, which is something that I can certainly relate to. But the particulars of her journey are quite different, and of course the religion that she joins is quite different. And so I think there's some similarities, but some things are purposefully dissimilar as well.
Okay. So with sticking with the religion and the sisters, is your portrayal of Mother Proxima and her requirement of the blind obedience, is that kind of a comment on organised religion, whether from your own experience or otherwise?
I think it is one of the ways that religion can be twisted and abused so that people can take power over others in ways that are harmful, both spiritually and physically, and in other ways. So, and I think that occurs not only across religions, but across any power structure. Anytime you concentrate power in one individual and tell everybody below them that their job is to obey that person, there's the opportunity for abuse of power. And so I think Mother Proxima is just one example of how things can go very wrong in a hierarchical power structure like that. And you know, she's kind of a fun character to write, because I think she really believes what she's selling to her acolytes, and she's managed to justify to herself all of the ways that she abuses that power. So she's a very particular kind of evil. She's evil that doesn't recognize that it is evil. She's evil that thinks that it's doing good. And as spooky as that is, it's also a lot of fun to write.
Yes, I mean, that is kind of the worst sort of evil, evil that thinks it's good.
Right, that thinks it's very good and virtuous. Yeah, absolutely.
She is a super character. I do like it when she just sort of lurks in the background and comes in being a little bit creepy.
Yes, absolutely.
With the Sisters of Severity, you kind of come back in the story several times to the motif of rejecting material possessions. So obviously the Sisters of Severity do that, the portrayal of Lux. Was it important to you to include that aspect in the story? Was that something that was originally there, or did that sort of develop with the story?
Yeah, the sort of the central conspiracy that draws all of the various different characters together was part of the story from the beginning. Because I think in the real world, it's always interesting to see how organizations that may seem to be in opposition from the outside can sort of be working together behind the scenes, because it's in both of their interests to continue the status quo. And that's very much how that particular conspiracy comes about. It's just kind of a way to explore how that happens. And, I feel like it's especially relevant today when you see that very thing unfolding in various parts of our own political and economic and religious atmosphere, where things that might seem to be in opposition are really working for the same power structure. And that's a fun thing to explore in something like space opera, where the stakes are quite low, because you're not talking about any real world thing. You're just kind of spinning out ideas that exist in the real world into this highly fantastical, fictionalized adventure story.
So, working on the assumption that we can view Lux as a substitute for a certain
company we won't name,
online retailer that we won't mention, did you kind of get any pushback from your editors or your publishers? Because presumably they have to sell books through said multinational retailer. Was there kind of any pushback about commenting on their potential abuse of power?
I think, because we're not commenting on any specific company or organization that exists in the real world, and instead using themes and ideas, no, I didn't get any kind of pushback. I think if we had caricatured any one thing in particular, then there might have been a conversation to be had. But since we were just sort of using the broader environment in which this exists, the economic forces that shape this particular mega corporation, without pointing fingers at any one particular Earthside corporation, then I think we sort of stayed on the right side of fiction. But it is an interesting line to try to walk, for sure.
Yes. So through one of your characters, you say that people don't want the truth; they just want information that supports what they think they know. You seem like a very positive person. You come across on social media as being very positive. That kind of cynicism, is that something that you think, or is that just something that you see from other people?
I don't know that it's necessarily something I think, but I think it is something that one must consider in any particular conversation. Is the person you're talking to, are the two groups who are talking looking for something like objective truth, or are they just looking for the information that supports what they think they already know? I think it's really more a comment on human frailty or alien frailty in this case. That it's so difficult for any of us to get out of our own little boxes of how we operate in the world, how we think the world is, the big truths that we think can be used to explain what's happening around us. And reaching escape velocity from that is very difficult, no matter your background. So, it is, I think, less cynicism than it is compassion. We're all struggling to figure out what the heck is going on and what our role is in all of this. And I think that's true of Vess, that's true of Brix. And I think coming from Brix and some of the other characters in the book, it is certainly lurid cynicism, because they have seen not the worst side of humanity, if we can call it that, but certainly the most boring side. And it's shaped how they see the rest of the world.
So speaking of sort of worlds and humanity or not humanity, how do you go about creating a whole new world or a whole new universe like the one in Invisible Kingdom? Where do you start? How do you create those worlds?
I think it starts with the kernel of an idea, and it's not always clear where that idea comes from. But in the case of Invisible Kingdom, a lot of the visual look of the world came from the very close collaboration that I've had with Christian Ward, who is not only an incredible artist, but has a wonderfully distinct worldview and world-building ability. And so a lot of the really visually distinct aspects of the story come from his ideas, the architecture in particular. I had kind of thrown out some very general ideas about how maybe the monastery should look, but it was Christian who said, you know what if we had it float? What if it wasn't a fixed place? What if it kind of could drift across the landscape? And because we were trying to stay away from parallels with any particular earth religion, and earth religions tend to have very pointy architecture, spires, minarets, things like that, we wanted to go in the opposite direction, and it was Christian who kind of came up with this wonderful mushroom shape of the buildings of the Renunciation, and the use of negative space. Instead of having pointy things, we'll have round negative spaces. And so that was a very collaborative world-building process, probably the most collaborative world-building process that I've had with an artist, because we were really starting from zero. There was nothing in our own environment that we could sort of use as a jumping off point. It was all kind of coming from scratch, and that was a big job. So I feel very lucky to have worked with Christian on building that world.
One of the things that really struck me in the book is the rule and how they have 4 genders.
Yeah.
What led you to present their gender in that way, with sort of ups and downs and
right and left?
Yeah, where did that come from?
So originally, as I was creating the backstories for these different peoples on different planets, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if one of these peoples started out as 2 separate symbiotic species who evolved together into one? Because if they're not space mammals, which is what we usually see sort of in space opera, then we can throw out the rules of how gender should work, reproduction should work, social norms, all of that stuff. So the Rulians have 4 genders because they evolved from 2 species that were symbiotic, and their reproductive process is quite different from what we're used to here on Earth, and we get into that a little bit more in the second arc of the series, which starts this month.
Yep.
And it was really just, it came out of my desire to just kind of chuck all of what we think we know about space opera, and also about romance and how outer space people should function. So we have one planet has 4 genders, another planet has 1 gender and reproduces asexually, and there is silica-based life form. So it's been fun to kind of say, you know what, let's just toss everything and start from scratch and just see what we can come up with. So yeah, it's been fun.
So just quickly, because I know that we're quite short on time today, what is next for you? I know that The Bird King, your prose novel, came out this year. What's next on the slate for you?
I've wrapped up a very exciting run on Wonder Woman at DC, which I was thrilled to be able to do. And tomorrow night here at Comic-Con, I'm pleased to be able to announce what I'm going to be working on next, which I'm very excited about. So stay tuned, I guess.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.